Disclaimer. You're about to listen/watch a podcast hosted by a group of friends who tend to use vulgar language and profanity, and also enjoy pounding adult beverages. Viewer discretion is advised. Lastly, we may be making some bold statements. All views and statements made in this podcast do not reflect the views of any sponsors, guests, followers, or any supporters of this podcast. So be cool and don't get offended. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoy.
Oh my gosh!
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of Ghostface Me. It looks like I'm a little pale in today's episode with the lighting, but today, on this specific episode, we are trying to do a new thing. Thanks to Taylor for the idea, and specifically Taylor and Mike for being able to provide the knowledge of Tech Talk. So it's Slowest Fact Tech Talk, and today's special topic is batteries. Taylor's going to go over a whole bunch of stuff with batteries and get real nitty gritty with it. So Taylor, without further ado, take the floor.
Yeah, this is one of the topics that I figured we could go over with because I've heard a lot of false information throughout the pits and stuff like that, and figured a lot of people could use this to their advantage. I have a whole bunch of list of different terms and definitions, and then we can go over all of them and kind of what they all mean. Simplest and most common one that you're going to see printed on all the batteries is MAH. What MAH stands for is milliamp hour rating, and that just stands for the battery's capacity for how much electrical charge it can store and how long it can power a device. So when I break it down to people and try to explain what that is, I try to tell people it's like, how big is your gas tank in a vehicle? So say my Toyota has an 18-gallon gas tank versus my truck has a 35-gallon gas tank. So the MAH rating in my truck in this situation is a lot bigger than my little Toyota. And then the next most common thing that you'll probably run into is one of the S ratings. And that's going to be for how many cells are wired up in a series to this arrangement changes the total voltage. So 2S means there's two pairs of cells wired up in series, and then that creates a nominal voltage of 7.4 volts versus 4S, the other common term that most of us racers are going to use, is 4 cells of batteries wired up to a nominal voltage of 14.8 volts. And then so there's different ways you can arrange the cells. And this is mostly to affect the overall capacity for the battery. So you could wire up different cells in parallel on top of that. So you could have a battery that says 4S2P. That lets you know that there's 4 cells wired in series made up to 2 different cells in parallel. So that increases the capacity of the battery without actually increasing the voltage. This could be good too for that punch, and what we'll talk about later is that C rating. I can show a couple different batteries too I have. So here's a 11,400 milliamp hour 2S battery. This one's rated 2S3P, so there's 2 cells in series for a total of 7.4 volts, but it's wired up 3 of them in parallel to increase the capacity.
You want to hold up the
Versus-
size of that thing, like compared to like a normal 2S? Like, I think it's massive, and like
Yeah,
the
this-
thickness of it. Yeah,
This is for drag racing, so
yeah,
yep, but it's
Yeah.
thick, so you
and it's
can
only
see
a
the size
2S.
difference.
Yeah,
Yep, here's your most standard 2S, the ProTech 6400. This is a 2S 2P, and then same almost looking battery, SMC makes, this is a 2S1P. So there's one big cell wired up in parallel versus this has two cells wired up in parallel. Yeah, that'll affect quite a bit of your C rating that we'll talk about here in just a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, packaging and things like that too for what they can fit within the battery itself.
What was that
So-
big drag pack? One more time.
It was a 3P.
That was
You
a
wanna see it?
3P. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was three. So
It's three 2S's in one case.
okay, and they're wired in parallel then, right?
well,
Ser-
two
or-
2S's are wired in series to get your total voltage of 7.4.
Okay.
But then it's three 2S packs, if you view it that way.
Yeah, to get your milliamp hour. Gotcha.
So there's just different ways to build and construct a battery. Terms you can kind of pay attention to what you're going after.
So with the
one of the what?
real quick with the 1 and 2P, so like a 2P, that's two cells rather than two ones, like two 1 cells of 3.7. That's one or two. A 2P. What is a 2P? I'll just ask the question.
So are we talking about a 2S 2P?
Yes. Yes.
So just take two 2S batteries
Uh-huh. That's it.
and you get two in parallel. Yes.
Okay. That's what I was getting at. Okay.
So
I've
you're
actually
just,
never seen that listed on the label of a battery before.
oh really?
Yeah.
Not some companies will list it on the label, but most of them do not. I think they're the general consumer market might not understand some of these terms or really pay attention to them. So
So
that's,
I have a Tekin. I have a Tekin 9000 milliamp stick 2-cell high voltage, and on the fine print on the back, it's worn out, but excuse me, it's right down here. You probably can't see it on the camera. It says 2S 2P. Fun fact. So it's there, just on the fine print.
one of the other terms that we kind of glanced over just so that people understand what it is nominal voltage. So what the nominal voltage is, it's just a reference point to determine the overall voltage of the battery pack when multiple cells are connected in a series. And so a normal 2S, or excuse me, each individual cell is 3.7 volts at nominally. Unless you get to high voltage, then they start rating them at 3.8 volts. And that's a storage charge or discharge. That's their nominal rating. Of course, when you go up and you start charging a cell, the normal cells are charged at 4.2 volts, and then high voltage cells are charged at 4.35 volts. And then I kind of want to backtrack to what we were talking about, the milliamp hour rating. Milliamp hour ratings are based on a full charge. So if you're using a high voltage pack, that rating for the sticker on the battery, that's at a high voltage charge. So this 6400 pack right here, it's only 6400 milliamp hours when you're charging it completely full to 4.35 volts per cell.
Which Lonzo had a little. He experimented last LCRC race with some high voltage packs, and with the same high voltage pack, when he charged it at the standard full to 4.2 a cell compared to 4.35 a cell, I think they were 4S packs, he would see 1,000 milliamp hour more. 2,000. Okay, right? 2,000.
2S packs.
Oh, 2S.
No, 2S packs.
Okay.
He
sorry.
runs
Yeah, he
shorties.
runs the saddle pack and the associated stuff.
Okay,
so
so it was a 2S pack. then.
probably similar battery. Yeah.
But he was seeing 1,000 milliamp more when he charged it to the full potential of the 4.35 a cell compared to the 4.2 a cell. So, like, if you're running high voltage packs, it's very vital that you charge them to their full potential so you can use all the battery. You know, I just wanted to add that in real quick.
Oh, for sure. And then
And
the
then
next thing, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know we're not gonna get into chargers today, but it's also very important that your charger is high voltage capable
Right.
if you're buying high voltage packs.
Definitely.
Most current gen chargers are. It's just, not all of them can.
Yeah, in case most people haven't figured it out, usually in most of the charger interfaces, they're all going to be different. You have to toggle off of the LiPo setting and switch it to LIHV setting for lithium high volt.
Or like
Yep, you don't get-
iCharger, you need to create your own profile for it. Really depends on the charger.
Yeah, and most will have warnings saying make sure you're actually charging a high voltage battery before you do so, and so on and so
Right.
forth.
Right.
But
And one of the things I did want to touch on for charging and stuff is the C rating for the charge rate on the batteries. Thought this is very important. So the C rating is the manufacturer recommendations for the charging. Most of your batteries are going to be rated at 1C. 1C equals the milliamp hour of the battery in amps. So, for example, if this 6400 pack is a 1C, you're going to take that in amp hour, so 6.4, and then 1C is 6.4. And then if you're going to double that, say it was a 2C rating, it'd be 2 times 6.4. I didn't even do the math ahead of time, so that's 12.8.
Amps.
Yeah, amps that you're allowed to charge at for your charger per the manufacturer's recommendations. So, should I do any more examples or anything like that, Mike?
not necessarily. It's just more so the number and just move the decimal point over 3.
Yeah.
And that's your 1C rating. So whatever the number is, decimal point over three spots.
Now what?
However, when it comes to C rating, I do want to say there is no industry standard for C rating.
Oh, different C rating. That's the next subject.
Okay, skipping that.
I'm just on the charge rate for C rating.
Can I?
Okay,
We have two
skipping.
different C ratings, and they don't really differentiate the two of them on the battery too well. So I'm going to
No.
touch on both of them right in a row.
Can I break in real quick while we're on the charger
Yeah.
C rating standpoint? So like I know like the standard is like we said, you take your milliamp and move it 3 decimal places, however you do the math. But in personal experience, like, and I'm sure a lot of other people are doing the same thing. You take your 4800 milliamp 2-cell, you're running your stock 2-wheel buggy, and you boost it at 15, 20 amps or whatever. Your charger is capable of your soul desires. That because it's stock racing, we want the IRs lower or whatever. Sometimes just want the battery to charge fast. Personally, on my boat, as I've said in other episodes, I've charged 300 milliamp hour batteries at 15 amps with no problem. I'm not telling anyone to do this. I'm just saying how, and this is like more of a statement / question, how like, we don't have to follow the Bible on what we charge them at, as long as we use some common sense in there and we're just careful. Like, I would never charge a battery at 100 amps, and I can't do that, but I never charge it at 100 amps and then go to the store and go out to dinner. Like, if I'm doing something I think isn't right, I'm gonna sit there and stare at it. So
I mean, even still, like I would add to Alex there, I would never tell anybody to charge over a 1C rating. Never recommend it.
right,
These things are so volatile, so dangerous
right, they are.
that why risk it? I granted, I'm not. Everybody around me does it. Everyone does it very, safely, or I guess never has issues. I get that, but I would never tell anybody. Oh, just pump 10 amps into it. It'll be fine.
That's something like I want to really
Like, and as an example, like I'm gonna move my camera. My batteries are currently charging right next to me, just in case.
right.
Never leave them unattended.
And that's something I really want to stress right now
Right.
is this little stick pack, and it could be a shorty too if it's only to my thumb there. This battery has the capable of burning my 2-story 3-bedroom house down right now. This
Yep.
little thing can burn my house down right now. These batteries are extremely dangerous, and it doesn't matter how careful you are. Things happen. Batteries do things you never expect them to do, no matter how safe you are. To where I can't express enough how you should always charge in a proper storage container, whether it's in a LiPo safe bag or an ammo crate or something fireproof. These batteries are very, very, very dangerous. They really are.
That was my next thing. Just free talking here while we're on the subject. So Mike just showed his. Alex, do you have some lipo-safe bags or ammo crates and stuff
I
that you
do.
store your batteries in?
They're packed away right now. This one was just loose today. I'm practicing bad procedure, but I have an old metal toolbox I made back in like 7th grade shop class or something that I keep all my batteries in when they're in my house. Otherwise, they're in a lipo safe bag, like when I'm traveling to and from races, because they, I can't express, especially like if anyone's ever like, had fun with a dead lipo, and like put a nail through it or, shot it with your gun, like extremely dangerous. And for any of my hazmat people, lipo fires isn't just something you can just put out with a normal fire extinguisher. It is a very volatile, dangerous. When lithium polymer interacts with oxygen, it's instant flames. So that oxygen's all around us. It's like 28% of what we breathe. So if this thing gets a puncture in it, my whole house is burning down. It's as simple as that.
The next subject that I was going to discuss, Mike, you already touched on too, is the other C rating. So
Yeah.
this stands for the maximum continuous discharge current that the battery relative to its capacity. So how quickly the battery can deliver its stored energy. And normally a higher C rating means the battery can handle more power and maintain voltage more inconsistently during its use. So, Mike, do you want to go mention what you said there earlier?
Yeah. So another way of looking at it is like the punch, right? The higher the number, the more punch the battery has. However, no manufacturer measures it the same. And in all honesty, and I forget the equation, I should have looked it up. But if you do the math on some of these C ratings, they almost feel
I have all
impossible.
the math. Yeah.
Okay. They almost feel impossible. Like 140 C discharge rating, I'm looking at some batteries in front of me, is a ridiculously high number of amperage, which most speedos and stuff can't even do that.
You just take
Okay.
the milliamp hour rating,
Yeah.
and you turn it to amp hours. Then you multiply that by the C rating on the battery, and that should give you the max current that the battery can deliver. So
let's do this real quick. So 77,700 milliamps, right? That's the equation. So you guys go to what, amp hour?
yeah, I mean, I
Milliamp
got
hour?
the math
whatever.
already for these little ProTech 6400 packs. It's
Okay, yeah, just do your
832
64.
amps. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
832 amps is
it's a 103
insane.
130 C rated pack.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
meaning what we're trying to get at is the C rating on the stickers is a little bit of snake oil. Take it with a grain of salt. They're not really that powerful because this thing can't deliver 832 amps. So what do I have? Amp rating examples: microwaves draw about 6.5 amps, and a vacuum cleaner draws around 4 amps. And this thing can't power my microwave. I'll tell you that.
But they can jump a car.
A 4S can.
A 4S or a 3S or higher, yes.
Yeah, they can.
I never tried it with a 2, so I'm sure it can't because that math just doesn't make sense.
It's only what, like 8.6
Yeah,
volts
you need
at max
like
or
at
something.
least 10 or 11 volts to turn an engine over, so.
Yeah, because even a stock car battery is what, 14 on a crank?
Yeah, while charging, it's like 13 to 14, yeah, ish.
Yeah. But yeah, those like portable batteries, like I have one in the trunk of my car all the time. All they are is just, they're not lipos, they're like lithium ion batteries or whatever. Yeah. That's all they are.
So what we were trying to get at though is still C rating is important, but the number's a lot more inflated than what they really are. So you definitely want a good C rating on a battery, but they're not as good as what the label says that they really are. What
These
it
things
really
would melt
affects
down
is
to nothing if they were doing 800 amps.
yeah,
Literally,
Yeah.
they would melt.
Affects voltage sag. So what that is a temporary drop in the voltage that occurs when a large current is drawn from the battery under like a heavy load. So if you're full throttle or anything like that, it's gonna drop the battery down low. So a higher C rating will be able to deliver more power, and you won't notice like a voltage sag or anything like that. Like
Yeah, it's more reflected in the IR of the battery after like 10 cycles or whatever. If the IR is still low or maintaining what it was when it first started when it was brand new, then you know like that C rating that's on there, if it's at 100 or higher, it's actually a good cell or good cells.
Right.
So then again though, I have, this nice $20 battery that's, like 4 or 5 years old. This thing's dope. It works great.
I have a couple things I wanted to mention that are not recommended. Charging higher than manufactured amp rates, Alex. That's one thing that's usually not recommended.
I never do that.
Letting the battery drop below 3.2 volts per cell.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That's very damaging to any type of LiPo battery. Although once in a while you can kind of rehab them back. Definitely not recommended, and it's just as bad, I would say, as overcharging a battery.
Yeah.
It is sketchy. I've done it in the past. So you have to trick the battery. You have to put it on
Nickel metal.
a different, nickel metal for 10 seconds at a time, just to get voltage in it.
It's the scariest thing to do.
Yes, it is possible. Would not recommend.
Do not recommend ever doing that. If you run your battery, if you have a dead cell or your battery's below voltage, it is the safest thing to do is trash it, dispose of it properly, buy another battery.
Yeah, that's a good point too,
We'll go over
Alex.
disposing of it at the end, how to get rid of them.
I didn't even think about kind of mentioning is when I charge, discharge, and all that, and I'm monitoring my battery's health, I like to view the individual cell voltage, and that kind of helps determine the health of the battery itself, making sure that all the cells are balanced. I have balance as a talking point here in just a little bit, so we can mention it in there as well. All right. So one of the other things I want to mention is batteries do not have a memory-like effect that some other people may have remembered in the past with nickel metal hydride and NiCad batteries. So when you're charging LiPos, you don't have to fully discharge the battery completely before you recharge it. It doesn't have the memory-like effect that older batteries used to. And then sticking with things that you should not do for LiPo batteries, once they're charged, it's best to use it kind of as soon as possible, then return it back to the storage voltage once that's done, because a battery not at storage voltage is constantly degrading over time, and it's cumulative damage. So for like an example, a battery left full charge for a month might have greatly increased internal resistance when used, which will cause decrease in performance and increase in heat. Usually like a day or two is kind of like my grace period for myself. If I'm not going to use the battery for more than 2 days, then I'll discharge it to storage voltage. But anything greater than that, it's going to get discharged right away. Then the next thing is internal resistance. So, or IRs that you'll hear them referred to on batteries and on your charger. So that's the resistance within the battery itself that opposes the flow of current. It's a measurement in a unit called ohms. That's the little symbol, looks like a bell on most chargers. Most people just realized.
Hieroglyphics.
Yeah. So the higher the IR means the battery has a harder time delivering the power and can lead to reduced performance, overheating, and reduced capacity. So once you start getting up in the IRs, it actually affects the milliamp hour rating of the battery that you can put into it for full capacity. And they can be measured by most of your chargers, I would say, on the market. Now, what affects your rating, though, is the temperature of the battery, the temperature you're charging it at, how many amps you're charging it at, the cleanliness of all the terminals and all the connections, and if you're using the same connector, they're all things that affect the IR rating. So I like to keep a close eye on my IRs anytime before I leave for a race. It's kind of when I can take my time, either write down some numbers or pay more close attention to them. So I have them in a climate controlled room in my garage. So they're always the same temperature. I'll use the same connectors, charge leads. I'll make sure all my battery terminals are clean at that time. And that's when I measure the IRs and write them down. So if you're at the track and the battery was just used and it came off hot, you're putting more amps to it that time, your IR rating is going to be completely different from the other rating. So that's something to keep in mind. Mike, do you have anything else on IRs?
Not necessarily to add. You covered it pretty well. I just want to show people a couple nice things to have if you're gonna have lipos, right? So one thing I'm plugging in is it's a lipo checker, right? So it runs off the balance port.
The little one.
And-
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah.
So it's showing the current voltage. I just charged this battery, so it's full. But if I hit cell, it's actually telling me each individual cell's voltage.
I like
You know,
this. I always meant to
it
get
doesn't-
one of those, but I've never picked one up.
Yeah, it doesn't show IRs, but the IRs are typically only going to be on a charger.
Right.
But one thing I did notice with this specific lipo checker is that once you plug it in, what it does, it actually takes like almost a screenshot of the battery and displays it to you. Versus this one that I use during discharging, is that it constantly cycles through all the voltages. And it actually live updates every time it checks the cell again, which is actually kind of neat. But that's two little things. And then after talking to Taylor about batteries about a month or two ago, and learning firsthand that discharging batteries sucks, even though you have to do it, bought a discharger, an actual standalone discharger. It has no power, does not plug into anything. The only thing that plugs into is battery, so battery powers it.
That'd be really funny if the discharger had to
Yeah.
plug into the wall.
You gotta
Yeah,
plug the
yeah.
battery into the
But yeah,
discharger.
the battery powers it.
Most
Um,
chargers have to work that way.
Right,
Dischargers.
right, because that's
With
how it
power,
makes
yeah.
sense.
And actually kind of like how I think I killed a charger is discharging a battery or batteries for too long of a period of time because it takes forever.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
pretty tough on them too, because it's sucking out the juice and it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And they only give the charger so many, what is it, like capacitors or something in there to
Yeah.
to dissipate all the juice. Because I remember back in the kick and dirt days, some people had like external, like when they had people with iChargers, they had the little external banky things too. That was just a bunch
Yep.
of, I think they're capacitors, resistors or something, with like fans on it and
Resistors.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. To where, Taylor told me about these things, so I finally bought one. And not only is it super nice, but discharge wise on a 4S, like a 7700 4S, my discharge time, not even maxed out, I have it set to 15 amps. It takes about 7 to 8 minutes to discharge that battery to storage voltage. It auto shuts off at 3.8 volts. You
Awesome.
just set it, forget it, and don't leave the room, obviously, because it's no different than charging the battery. So don't leave it unattended. But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
What does one of those run?
But so this thing was only like $70, I think.
Yeah.
What is it?
I have
Buy
the,
once, buy
um,
once,
One
cry
that they don't
once
make
kind of thing?
anymore.
Yeah, no,
this
so
is the one
they-
that
yeah.
predates what Mike has. They don't make this one anymore, unfortunately. But this one only goes up to 6 amps. So, but Mike's is a little bit
Cool.
bigger, has a bigger heat bank on it. So,
Is that
yeah,
the one you
mine
bought
goes
off of me,
to.
Mike?
No, I bought this on
Okay.
AMA. So mine goes up to 25 amps. I normally only do
Jesus.
15 amps.
You're
Yeah.
gonna like suck the battery like a
it's the-
cartoon. It's gonna be flat.
It's the FD200 if it will focus, but
So,
by ISDT.
ISDT.
And another thing that's cool about it, Taylor, I don't know if yours has it, but ISDT makes an app to where when this thing has power, it actually Bluetooths to your phone or Wi-Fi
This
to your
one
phone.
doesn't. You can buy the external. It's like a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack to a USB, and you can plug it into your laptop, and you can kind of program it a little bit. It's a little
Yeah.
outdated, and I've tried to use the technology, and it's very
Plugging it into
Japanese.
your computer sounds outdated.
It is. Yeah, it's actually like a very sketchy app when you go to download it, and you're like, "Is this the right thing?" Because it's not even labeled. This is the company's name.
Outdated.
Ignityvirus.com.
Yeah, but it is their app. They do tell you to download it in their manual and whatnot.
So,
And I haven't messed with it too much, but the capability is there to actually live view what the discharger is doing direct to your cell phone, which is kind of cool.
real quick, to link into a little history lesson.
Yep.
This is also a discharger
Mm-hmm.
that I'm holding in my hands here. Yes, it's much smaller, has a little LED. I've never used it. This came in a box
Well,
of
it shouldn't
stuff.
be an LED because LEDs don't use juice.
Well, I don't know.
Should be
Maybe it's an
incandescent
amber or incandescent.
or
Yes.
something.
Anyways, back in the day, we're talking like early 2000s, late 90s, and
Well, back in
farther.
the nickel metal days.
Yeah, back in the nickel metal
In the
days when
NiCad
they're
days.
running 6, 7, 8 cell NiCad nickel metal batteries, they would take each cell, and then each cell they would match them and discharge them. They would use something like this, or even like a string, like literal, it would be light bulbs on a 2x4, and they plug them in, and that would be your discharger.
Yeah, you'd like plug the whole like battery and.
Yeah, and then they would get, they'd figure out what the cells even out to charged, and then they would, when they build their battery packs, they would write down what the cells come out to charged, and then they would build the battery packs with the matched cells, and it was a whole fucking process before we had our spoiledness of
Yeah,
just
why don't we
buying
have
one
somebody
2
older
cell
on
pack.
telling us about this?
Well, because I can.
Okay.
But yeah, so back in the day, this was a discharger, so it's just nice to see how technology has moved since then. Before you'd just be like, yeah, light's still on, it's still discharging.
Yeah, it's still a little glowing a little bit.
But
there.
now Uncle Mike can just get on his phone and just be like, yeah, well, I'm going to skip the next song on Spotify, and yeah, my battery's still discharging. Okay.
And also back in the day with those ones, you didn't have to worry about damaging your cells too much when you suck the juice out of them.
No,
as much
because
as lifeboats,
there's no amp rate with this. It just uses it.
Yeah.
Well, that and those nickel metal packs, they're fully revivable. They can
Right.
be
Oh, yeah.
0 volts.
Yeah.
You can get them back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where lipos, another reason to not discharge them too far is if they drop below 3.2, they can swell.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's the next
And if they-
subject.
Yeah, so I'll hold off on that one.
All right. I was going to touch base. Mike was showing his fancy little cell checkers. I have one from Toolkit RC. Thing's tiny, fits in your pocket. It also doubles as a charger. This does check up to 6S. So 2 to 6S, XT60s on the sides of it, and it'll measure IRs, and it could double as a charger as long as you have an input.
Yeah, so to add on to yours is cool too. You can actually plug a battery into that thing, and like the USB on the other side, you can like charge a phone and stuff off of it too,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Those are a little more expensive. Those are, I don't know what,
Like
50 to
$40.
100.
No, this was like 40 or less.
That's not bad because I
Times
think the
Put a link to
Spectrum
that in
one,
the
I think is the one I was looking at. It
People
was
want
a
that,
little
Right
pricey.
here.
Yeah, you do that.
Now,
But-
stay tuned for the Slowest Fast RC podcast cell checker coming soon.
Oh, yeah. Someone else
Sure.
did it. I'm still figuring out this 3D printing bullshit.
Yeah. Next subject, Mike started to touch on base. He's ahead of me on pretty much everything already. Is
I'll see
puffing.
myself out. All right.
Blind. Everyone say
So I have
blind, Mom.
puffing next. What that is an
Wow,
indicator
that's
of the battery
suggestive.
being ready for disposable. It's worn out. These batteries will expand or puff up as the components inside them turn into a gas. What causes it? Oftentimes, it's overcharging, over discharging below the nominal voltage. Exactly what you were kind of saying just a few moments ago, Mike. Overheating, physical damage. It leads to electrolyte decomposition, and it produces gases like
Oh,
oxygen,
So it just needs
and they
Gatorade.
make the battery swell up and puff. You can see this in hard cases where the case will split, and then you can grab a battery and kind of squeeze it a little bit.
Yeah, if your
Like,
lipo is gets a dome to it, it starts getting squishy. That means it has gas in it.
If it wobbles on
Um,
the table.
If it took
They're
its blue chew.
yeah, they're not recoverable. There is no saving them. Once they puff, they're puffed forever.
Correct.
Um, at a certain point, yes, you can still use a slightly puffed battery. Once the case splits, though, I would not mess with it.
It's kind of like a ticking time bomb, in my opinion.
No,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
you
want
don't
them
know when.
close or in your car. If it catches fire at any time, it's bringing something down with it. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
And then,
if they wobble a little bit, user caution. But if you can roll the thing on a table, get rid of it.
Yeah, it's like I have personally I have two 4S's right now. Excuse me. To where the top and the sides of the batteries are absolutely perfectly square. The bottom, however, has a slight little dome to it. Hooking it on the charger, there is nothing wrong with any of the cells. All the IRs are perfectly fine. But it just has a slight dome to the bottom of the battery. Couldn't tell you why or how it happened. It just happened. I'm looking down right now actually on my phone trying to find a picture of the last time I was at a track. It's not the reason why I don't go there anymore, but here it is. Somebody was charging a battery in their car, which I never recommend to do, and I know a lot of people that do it, and I hate to see it. Is that?
Yeah,
Oh,
buddy.
yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
That is an e-buggy sitting on someone's table, currently on fire. Yeah, so shit's no joke. And that is the reason why I've seen that happen twice in person. That's the reason why I do not charge my batteries in my car. Because I would rather somebody rip my charger off my table and just chuck it than me losing, $1,000 car, But
Yeah. One of the last subjects I got is balancing. So, any LiPo battery is made from more than one individual cell, and it has the potential to have cells come out of balance. Ideally, you want to have all the cells in a single battery to be at the same voltage at all times. And to help achieve this, your LiPo charger has an option called balance charging. So, some chargers will also split up charging into two different rates. So, we're not going to talk about chargers too much. When you're shopping for one will have a fast charge rate, and then one will have what's called a balance circuit, and then that'll be how many amps or how many watts it's able to balance your battery at. So it'll also charge a lot quicker on the fast charge.
yeah,
And
a lot of
then-
them will be like fast charged to like 80%, and then from there it trickles.
Yeah,
You'll see on the charger your amp rate actually slowly drop.
yeah. How
Yeah.
each battery or charger does it, they're all different from manufacturer to manufacturer for the most part. So this is also why a 2-cell or greater battery has this second plug on it called the balance plug, and it's what you should always be doing.
Or a
pretty
little
much.
hole. If it's a
Yeah,
bullet.
or
yeah,
the little
yeah.
hole.
2S's
Yeah.
will have the little hole. Yeah.
Yeah. So after you're done charging or done using a battery, if one of the cells is significantly lower voltage than the others, it's kind of leading to potentially time to retire the battery.
And we're not talking like
Yep.
0.02 volts difference here. We're talking like 0.1 or more volts difference. Like that's what I go off of, at least. If it's like 0.1 difference, then I balance charge it a few times, try to save it. If it doesn't, then it's junk.
Yeah.
One of the things to add before we get away from that is making sure the charger is calibrated too.
Yeah, for sure.
This is all assuming that your charger is calibrated.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. Over the years of charging lipos, it's more so if you charge at 1C rating, meaning if it's 5,000 milliamps, you charge it at 5 amps. When it's dead, so a lipo cutoff is like 8.35 or something like that, 8.34. From that point to 100%, it should take about 45 minutes. from dead to fully charged. If it's taking longer than 45 minutes to charge your battery to where it's beeping that it's done, all of that time past 45 minutes is most likely spent balancing the cells.
Mhm.
If it's taking an hour to balance the cells, most likely there's something wrong with that battery internally. To where,
The resistance,
Really time to
one
check
of-
it?
One of the cells has
Yeah,
a lot
like-
of ohms.
yeah, and it's not balancing out with the other ones because it'll actually overcharge certain cells, and then you'll see the voltage when you're watching on the charger. It'll bounce it to the other cells to like try to balance them out. But so then at that point, I mean, it's like you look at the battery, make sure it's might be time to replace it. But on the flip side of it, it could also be your charger going bad too. But most of the time, it's the battery because your charger should last quite a while. But
And that's all I got.
same here. And cut.
Well,
Yep.
One last quick thing. I think it's a great way
No,
to
nope.
end it
You
too.
cut.
No,
No.
we just
No,
I did
He
the
didn't,
thing.
he didn't print it yet.
no.
This was the thing. No, go ahead.
Disposing of junk lipos.
Yes.
How do you guys do it?
How
do you want to tell the listeners to use it? Do it.
Saltwater bath. Get a bucket, water, salt.
Yep.
Let them soak for like a week. Unless you live in the country, then there's different ways.
And a 22 does a good job.
My friend likes to shoot them with the 22 or a nail gun, and then put them in a fire pit. But I don't recommend
No.
that.
You know the smell.
Yeah, I'm
Everything's
lucky,
fine
'cause-
as long as you do it safely.
Yes.
I live in the country, so I can just put them in the fire pit and stuff like that.
Right.
Do not throw them in your trash,
So when you're living,
especially
in,
if they have charge.
Oh yeah. When you're living in a not country, Mike, you recommend saltwater bath for approximately
Yes.
a week,
Yep,
and
that's what
then
we used to do at the hobby shop.
and then you
Yep.
throw them in the trash from there.
Yeah, at that point they should be fully discharged because the salt water actually like takes the
Yeah.
charge out of the batteries.
Right.
And at that point, I mean, yeah, they're dead. You can safely throw them away at that point, like recycle them. Yeah.
Okay. I'm good now. I just wanted to
Okay. I'm talking to our guest for the next podcast right now.
hold
Here
that
we go.
thought. Anything else on batteries?
Well, he's saying we have to calibrate our chargers now, and I'm concerned.
We'll Google it.
Chargers will be the next. That's another topic
That's
for
the
another
next
time.
one.
Okay.
All right.
We're
Yeah.
not deep diving into chargers
Yeah.
today.
This has
No,
been
that'll be a while.
this
This
has
is a
been
math
slow as
job
fast.
halfway through.
This has been slow as fast. Tech Talk Battery Edition. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment with all your things, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Keep it between the pipes, on its wheels, off its lid, and slow as fast. Cut.
Balance your batteries.
Goodbye.